What happens when a successful entrepreneur sits down for what should be a simple interview, only to face an onslaught of disrespect and condescension from a host who refuses to listen? In just 47 seconds, Denise Welch turned a conversation into a battleground that would end with a guest walking off set and the studio erupting into absolute chaos. Dr. Sara Al Madani walked onto the Loose Women set that afternoon, expecting a conversation about her business achievements and her journey as an entrepreneur. She had built multiple successful companies, spoken at international conferences, and inspired thousands of young women across the Middle East and beyond. But from the moment she sat down, it became clear this interview was going to be anything but straightforward. Denise Welch started with what seemed like a simple question. So, Dr. Al Madani, you've had quite the journey. Tell us, how does someone like you manage to succeed in business when there are so many obstacles in your way? The phrasing alone set an uncomfortable tone. Someone like you. Sara kept her composure, smiling politely. Well, I think success comes from hard work, dedication, and refusing to accept limitations that others try to place on you. I've always believed that if you have a vision and you're willing to put in the effort, anything is possible. Denise leaned back in her chair with a look that suggested she wasn't buying it. Right, but surely you had help along the way. I mean, nobody does it completely on their own, do they? Sara nodded graciously. Of course, I've had mentors and supporters, but I've also faced rejection, failure, and people who doubted me at every turn. The key is to keep pushing forward. That's when Denise's tone shifted noticeably. But isn't it true that in your part of the world, women have a much harder time? I mean, how much of your success is really down to you, and how much is just, being in the right place at the right time? The other panelists shifted uncomfortably. Nadia Sawala glanced at Linda Robson, who raised her eyebrows slightly. The implication was clear and insulting. Sara's success was being minimized before she'd even had a chance to properly explain her journey. I'm not sure I understand what you're suggesting, Sara said carefully, maintaining her professional demeanor. My success is built on years of hard work, strategic planning, and execution, just like any other entrepreneur. Denise waved her hand dismissively. Yes, but come on. Let's be honest here. There must be certain, shall we say, advantages to being who you are in certain circles. The audience went quiet. Even through the television screen, viewers could feel the tension building. Nadia jumped in, trying to redirect. I think what's really impressive is how you've managed to build such a diverse portfolio of businesses. Can you tell us more about that? But Denise wasn't done. She cut across Nadia mid-sentence. No, I want to understand this. Because we hear these success stories all the time, and I just think our viewers deserve the full picture. Not everyone has the same opportunities, do they? Sara's expression remained calm, but there was steel in her voice now. You're absolutely right. Not everyone has the same opportunities. Which is exactly why I work so hard to create opportunities for other women, to mentor young entrepreneurs, and to prove that success is achievable regardless of your background. But your background isn't exactly disadvantaged, is it? Denise pressed, leaning forward with a confrontational edge. Linda Robson interjected nervously. I think Sara's achievements speak for themselves, don't they? I mean, building multiple businesses is no small feat. Denise turned to Linda with obvious irritation. I'm just asking questions that I think people at home are wondering. We can't just sit here and accept everything at face value. Sara took a breath, her patience clearly wearing thin. What exactly are you implying, Denise? Because it sounds like you're suggesting that my success is somehow illegitimate or unearned. I'm not implying anything, Denise shot back. I'm simply saying that context matters. Your situation is different from most women. Different how? Sara asked, her voice measured but firm. Well, Denise said, gesturing vaguely. Your culture, your connections, the fact that you've had certain doors open for you that others haven't. The studio audience gasped audibly. Nadia's mouth dropped open. Denise, I don't think that's fair, she said quickly. But Sara held up her hand. No, let her finish. I want to hear exactly what she means. Denise seemed emboldened by the confrontation. All I'm saying is that we shouldn't pretend that everyone starts from the same place. Some people have privileges they don't acknowledge. Privileges, Sara repeated slowly. You want to talk about privilege? I've worked in industries where I was the only woman in the room. I've had people refuse to shake my hand because of my gender. I've been told I should be at home rather than running companies. And I've succeeded despite all of that. So please, tell me more about my privileges. The audience erupted in applause. Denise's face flushed red. There's no need to be defensive, she snapped. I'm not being defensive, Sara replied evenly. I'm defending myself against baseless accusations disguised as questions. Linda tried again to smooth things over. I think we're all just trying to have an honest conversation here. An honest conversation? Sara said, turning to Linda. An honest conversation would involve actual questions about my work, not thinly veiled suggestions that I haven't earned my success. Denise laughed, but it was harsh and humorless. Oh, come on. You're being oversensitive. I'm just doing my job as a journalist. Your job as a journalist, Sara said, her voice rising slightly, is to ask informed, respectful questions, not to make assumptions based on stereotypes and prejudice. Prejudice? Denise's voice went up an octave. How dare you suggest I'm prejudiced? I've been a champion for women's rights for decades. Then act like it, Sara said simply. The studio went completely silent. Even the crew members stopped moving. Nadia looked like she wanted to crawl under the desk. Linda stared at her notes, clearly wishing she was anywhere else. Denise's face went from red to purple. I don't have to sit here and be insulted by a guest who can't handle basic questions. And I don't have to sit here and be disrespected by a host who clearly has an agenda, Sara fired back. Denise turned to the camera dramatically. This is what happens when you try to have a real conversation. People can't handle the truth. The truth? Sara stood up, her microphone still attached. The truth is that you invited me here under false pretenses. You said this would be a discussion about entrepreneurship and empowerment. Instead, you've spent the entire time trying to undermine my achievements and question my credibility. I've done no such thing, Denise insisted, though her tone suggested otherwise. Nadia finally found her voice again. Maybe we should take a quick break and reset. No, Sara said firmly. What? There's no resetting this. Denise, you've shown your true colors today. You talk about supporting women, but the moment a woman who doesn't fit your narrative sits in front of you, you try to tear her down. That is absolutely not what's happening here, Denise protested, looking to the other panelists for support. But Linda and Nadia remained silent, their expressions suggesting they agreed more with Sara than with their colleague. Let me ask you something, Sara continued, her voice steady and clear. If I were a white British businessman, would you question whether I deserved my success? Would you suggest I had unfair advantages? Would you dismiss my hard work as being in the right place at the right time? Denise sputtered. This isn't about... You're twisting my words. I'm repeating your words, Sara corrected, and they speak for themselves. The audience began to murmur, some clapping in support of Sara. Denise looked around desperately, realizing she was losing control of the situation. You know what? Denise said, her voice dripping with condescension. Maybe you're just not cut out for this kind of open dialogue. Maybe you're used to people just accepting whatever you say without question. Sara laughed, but it was a laugh of disbelief rather than amusement. Open dialogue? Is that what you call this? You haven't listened to a single thing I've said. You came into this interview with your mind already made up about who I am and what I represent. I think you're being incredibly rude to our host, Denise said, attempting to regain the moral high ground. And I think your host has been incredibly rude to me from the moment I sat down, Sara replied, without missing a beat. Linda leaned forward cautiously. Maybe we can all just take a breath and... No, Linda, Sara interrupted gently but firmly. I appreciate that you're trying to keep the peace, but some things need to be said. I came here in good faith. I came here to share my story and hopefully inspire other women who might be watching. Instead, I've been subjected to what can only be described as a hostile interrogation based on prejudiced assumptions. Denise scoffed loudly. Oh, please, you're being completely over the top. I asked you a few challenging questions. That's what we do here. Challenging questions are fine, Sara said. Questions that challenge me to explain my strategies, my decisions, my vision for the future. Those are challenging questions. What you've done is challenge my right to be successful at all. I have done nothing of the sort, Denise insisted, her voice getting shrill. Sara began unhooking her microphone. I'm not going to sit here and continue this charade. Thank you to Nadia and Linda for trying to make this work, but I have too much respect for myself to stay in a space where I'm clearly not respected. You can't just walk off, Denise said, standing up as well. We're in the middle of a live show. Watch me, Sara said calmly. Nadia stood up too, reaching out to Sara. Please don't go. We can sort this out. Sara turned to her with a sad smile. Nadia, you seem like a lovely person, but this isn't something that can be sorted out with a quick apology and a commercial break. And what's happened here today is symptomatic of a bigger problem. And what problem is that? Denise demanded. The problem, Sara said, turning to face Denise squarely, is that women like you claim to champion women's causes, but only for women who look like you, sound like you, and fit into your comfortable worldview. The moment someone different shows up, someone who challenges your assumptions, you feel threatened and lash out. I am not threatened by you, Denise spat. Then why have you spent this entire interview trying to diminish me? Sara asked simply. Denise had no answer. She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again, like a fish gasping for air. The audience was completely engaged now, some standing, some covering their mouths in shock at what they were witnessing. Linda made one more attempt. Sara, I'm sure Denise didn't mean any offense. Sometimes things come out wrong on live television. Linda, I appreciate your kindness, but we both know that's not true, Sara said softly. These weren't slip-ups or poor word choices. This was deliberate. Denise knew exactly what she was doing. You are so arrogant, Denise burst out. You come onto our show and then accuse us of prejudice when we don't fawn all over you. Fawning? Sara raised her eyebrows. I didn't ask for fawning. I asked for basic respect and professional courtesy, the same respect you'd show any other guest. Denise pointed her finger at Sara. I have interviewed hundreds of guests, and I have never been spoken to like this. Maybe that's because your other guests were too polite to call you out, Sara suggested. Or maybe they didn't have to, because you treated them with the respect you've refused to show me. Nadia put her head in her hands. Linda looked at the floor. The producers in the control room were likely losing their minds, but the cameras kept rolling. This is absolutely ridiculous, Denise said, throwing her hands up. I invite a guest onto the show. I ask legitimate questions about her background and success, and suddenly I'm the villain? Your questions weren't about my background and success, Sara corrected. They were about discrediting my background and success. There's a difference, and you know it. I'm trying to give our viewers the full picture, Denise argued. No, you're trying to fit me into a narrative you've already written in your head, Sara countered. And when I didn't cooperate, you got defensive and hostile. The audience murmured in agreement. Several people were nodding along with Sara's words. Denise looked out at the audience with disbelief. Are you all seriously buying this? The response was not what she expected. Several audience members shouted support for Sara. Let her speak, someone called out. You were rude to her, another voice added. Denise's face went through several shades of red and purple. This is my show, she said, her voice shaking with anger. Actually, Sara said quietly, it's a show with 4 hosts, and 2 of them have barely been able to get a word in because you've been so focused on attacking me. Linda and Nadia exchanged glances, but didn't contradict Sara's assessment. I have not been attacking you, Denise said, though her tone suggested otherwise. I've been doing my job. If this is your job, Sara said, now fully disconnected from her microphone, then you're not very good at it. The audience gasped and then erupted in mixed reactions. Some applauded Sara's boldness. Others seemed shocked by the directness of the statement. Denise looked like she might explode. Get out, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Get off my set. I was already leaving, Sara reminded her calmly. You don't get to kick me out when I've already chosen to go. This is unbelievable, Denise said to the camera. This is what passes for a professional these days. Someone who can't handle a tough interview. Sara paused at the edge of the set and turned back one final time. Denise, the problem isn't that I can't handle a tough interview. I've handled interviews with some of the toughest journalists in the world. The problem is that you don't know the difference between tough and disrespectful. And until you learn that difference, you're going to keep having moments like this. With that, Sara walked off the set with her head held high, leaving behind a studio in complete disarray. Nadia turned to the camera awkwardly. Well, that was certainly unacceptable, Denise finished for her. That behavior was completely unacceptable. But Linda surprised everyone by speaking up. Actually, Denise, I think Sara had a point. Some of your questions were a bit what? Denise demanded, rounding on her colleague. A bit pointed, Linda finished carefully. I mean, you have to admit, you were quite aggressive from the start. I was not aggressive, Denise insisted. I was thorough. Nadia nodded slowly. But maybe there was a way to ask those questions that didn't come across quite so what? Denise's voice was rising again. Hostile, Nadia finished quietly. Denise looked between her 2 co-hosts in disbelief. I cannot believe you're both taking her side. We're not taking sides, Linda said quickly. We're just saying that maybe, in hindsight, the interview could have gone differently. She walked off our show, Denise said, emphasizing each word. She disrespected us. She disrespected our audience, and she disrespected this program. Did she, though? Nadia asked carefully. Or did she just refuse to accept being disrespected herself? Denise stared at Nadia like she'd grown a second head. I did not disrespect her. Denise, Linda said gently, you kind of did. How? Denise demanded. By asking questions? By not just accepting everything she said at face value? By the way you asked the questions, Nadia explained. It wasn't what you asked. It was how you asked it, and the assumptions behind it. Denise shook her head vigorously. No, I refuse to accept this. I did nothing wrong. She came on here with an attitude, and when she didn't get the easy ride she expected, she threw a tantrum and left. But the audience's reaction suggested they didn't agree. Several people were shaking their heads, and the applause that had supported Sara earlier had not materialized for Denise's defense. Linda looked at the camera. I think we need to go to a commercial break. No, Denise said sharply. We're not running away from this. I want to address what just happened. Denise, Nadia said carefully, maybe it's better if we take a moment to... I said no, Denise cut her off. Our viewers deserve to hear the truth about what just happened here. The truth, Linda repeated slowly, is that our guest felt disrespected and chose to leave. And honestly, Denise, I can't say I blame her. The shock on Denise's face was visible to everyone watching. Her own co-host had essentially sided with the guest who had just walked off the show. Linda, you can't be serious, Denise said, her voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. I'm very serious, Linda replied, meeting Denise's eyes. I sat here and watched you question that woman's integrity, her success, and her right to be proud of what she's accomplished. And I stayed quiet because I didn't want to cause a scene. But Sara was right. She deserved better. Nadia nodded in agreement. I feel the same way. I kept trying to redirect the conversation, but you kept pushing and pushing. Denise looked around the studio wildly, as if searching for allies. She found none. Even the audience members she could see were looking at her with expressions ranging from disappointment to outright disapproval. This is absolutely insane, Denise said, her voice cracking slightly. I'm being attacked for doing my job as a journalist. You're not being attacked, Nadia said softly, but you are being called out. And maybe that's something you need to hear. I don't need to hear anything from either of you, Denise snapped. I've been on this show longer than both of you combined. I know what I'm doing. Then maybe it's time to learn something new, Linda suggested quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Denise stood there, her chest heaving with emotion, her face still flushed red, looking completely isolated despite being surrounded by people. Fine, Denise finally said, her voice tight. If that's how you both feel, then maybe I'm the one who should leave. Nadia reached out. Denise, don't. But Denise was already unhooking her own microphone. No, clearly I'm the problem here. Clearly I'm the villain in this situation. So I'll remove myself. That's not what we're saying, Linda tried to interject. Isn't it? Denise challenged. You've both made it very clear whose side you're on. There shouldn't be sides, Nadia said desperately. We're supposed to be a team. Teams support each other, Denise said coldly. They don't undermine each other on live television. With that, Denise walked off the set in the opposite direction Sara had gone, leaving Nadia and Linda alone at the desk, staring at each other in complete shock. The studio audience didn't know whether to applaud, gasp, or stay silent. The confusion was palpable. Linda looked at Nadia. Nadia looked at Linda. Neither seemed to know what to say or do. Finally, Nadia turned to the camera with a shaky smile. Well, this has certainly been an unexpected show. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll figure something out, Linda finished for her, sounding just as uncertain. The camera held on their stunned faces for a moment before cutting away, leaving viewers at home with the image of a panel show that had completely fallen apart. 2 hosts gone, and 2 remaining hosts looking absolutely lost. What had started as a simple interview about entrepreneurship and success had devolved into a full-scale confrontation that exposed tensions about respect, prejudice, and the responsibilities of those with platforms. Sara Al Madani had walked onto that set expecting a conversation. Instead, she found herself having to defend not just her achievements, but her right to be treated with basic dignity. And when pushed too far, she made the choice that too many people are afraid to make. She walked away. She refused to accept treatment that diminished her worth, and in doing so, she held up a mirror to behaviors that often go unchallenged. The fact that even Denise's own colleagues ultimately couldn't defend her approach spoke volumes about what had really transpired on that set. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is recognize when a situation is beyond repair and have the strength to remove yourself from it. Sara did exactly that, leaving behind a studio full of people forced to confront uncomfortable truths about how we treat those who are different from us.